Hey Rachel,
Hey Ryan.
how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm feeling yum yum, Rachel. I am so filled to the brim with yum yum. I'm oozing it out of all orifices, out of all of my pores. The yum yum is just brimming, oozing, squirting out of me. I am up to here with yum yum. And for those who are listening and not watching like Rachel is, you might be watching, you might have a hole in one of the walls here looking at me. I indicated very highly. My hand went way above my head to indicate how full of yum yum I am.
Yeah.
What's yum yum in relation to again, Rachel? After all, we named our show after it. What is yum yum?
Commander Nan's response to going and forming an AI sausage.
Well, kind of. So, Yum Yum is an iconic line of dialogue, a truly divine line of dialogue, a line dispensed by a great character in response to another great character, and the line itself, coming from a great character, being in response to a great character, makes it a great line in itself, but not just that. Who would have thought that saying yum yum as a reply to something would be like
Not food related.
I wouldn't have thought of putting that down in a script, especially for my new Star Trek television show, but that's why the writers of Star Trek Discovery Season 2 are ahead of me. They're just so much smarter than me, and we are going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Rachel. I'm excited.
We're done with Season 1. We did the short treks as well as a Season 1 recap, and now we're on to the first episode of Season 3.
Season 3, you're skipping ahead. Season 2.
No, Season 3 has just started to air, but we are starting rewatch of Season 2.
And just to go over a couple of things first before we say the episode and get into it. Obviously, there's going to be spoiler discussions for Star Trek. We aren't going to get into what's happening with Season 3 as it is still currently airing, and as we record this and as when this comes out, things may not be fully lined up. We may be recording an episode or two ahead of what has actually been released by the time we release it, so there's going to be some sync issues, and also, this being our rewatch show, the rewatch factor
focusing
of
on this season.
Season 2 inspired us to want to talk about Discovery, but also when we do get up to Season 3, it will be really redefined by our rewatching of it, because as we've said before, Season 2 really left us in a weird headspace watching it that first time, and a part of the reason we wanted to do the whole podcast was because Season 2 in particular was such a wild ride of miscellaneous details and parts that we said to ourselves, maybe we have to rewatch it to catch up with it, to see what a lot of other people apparently see in it. Is it more of a mess than we give it credit for originally, or is it this divine piece of art that people see? We'll have to see on this rewatch. What value can we find in it? Exactly. So, where did it all begin, Rachel? What one are we kicking off with?
The episode is entitled Brother.
Yep.
And it originally aired in January of 2019. And it is a full hour.
Yeah, well, minus 2 minutes for the recap, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have recaps that go for less than 2 to 4 minutes.
No.
They always go that long because, you know, the show's so full of details, again, filled to the brim with minutia, that the audience needs those long recaps to remind us of what's happened.
Previously on Star Trek Discovery.
The description of the plot is: the crew of the USS Discovery joins forces with Captain Pike to unravel the mystery of 7 mysterious red signals that have appeared across the universe. Mysteriousness.
I guess that is the plot. That is more so, if anything. I mean, it does reflect the plot of this episode, but that is kind of the whole season. It is the mystery box of the season, of mysterious red signals. Really, the red signals look, there's a whole thing with the red signals and the red angel, and we'll get into it as the season goes along, but at the basic core of it all, the red signals serve to make the plot happen, and not just the big time travel plot that will unfold, but more importantly, the plot of each episode. Oh, they go to a place because a red signal's there, and oh, when you know it, a little adventure ensues. And that's what this episode is really about, because this episode is really about Pike and all that, all these things going on, but really it is about our crew going to this place, finding a new adventurous situation because of this red signal, and picking up little things along the way, whether it be a new character, a piece of technology, or an important piece of geology, I guess, that will help them later in the season. Mm-hmm. It is a mixture of episodic and serialized in a way, where really, for the first few from a recollection, they could have been isolated stories of, oh, and the red signal's here. Like, if this was an old school kind of 1960s, 70s show, this could have been a plot of, oh, this mysterious signal here, we got to go find what it is, and each week they go to a place, have a little adventure, and then the next week is, oh, we're picking up the trail again. Off we go to figure it out. And I kind of do appreciate that element of season 2. Don't really care for the overall, well, we'll see, but my initial watch, I didn't really care for the overall story of the red signals and the red angel, and we'll talk about that. But I didn't mind the idea of having, here's this thing that is just a little thing to propel each episode's story. Okay, cool. It's more engaging to me than the fucking Klingon War ever was, but also it's stupider than the Klingon War because, well,
yeah, in some ways,
at least the Klingon War made sense from the very beginning. Like, my thing is, the red signals, I don't understand what they are. Like, I understand what they are at the end, but I don't understand how it works, because they have a thing where all these signals pop into existence at once, and they get all the information of all of them at once across the galaxy or whatever, and I don't understand how that works. Like with light speed and all these factors.
They registered, and they were able to cross-reference that they appeared simultaneously.
Oh yeah, they have an explanation in their way, but also then there's so much to say about those red signals. We'll have the whole season to discuss.
Over the past 24 hours, Federation sensors picked up 7 red bursts spread out across more than 30,000 light years. They appeared in perfect synchronization, just long enough for us to get a reading, and then just as suddenly disappeared. Except for one.
Well, such precise synchronization all but rules out the chaos of natural phenomena. Are they some kind of signal?
That's what we're calling it.
We haven't seen season 2 in a while, right? Like, in the real world, it's been however many months or so since we've seen the world of Star Trek. Okay, here we are. Season 2 opens up, and what did it open up with, Rach?
A weird-ass voiceover and a flashback?
No, not a flashback straight away. Random weird-ass footage of planets and rocket ships and random shit everywhere.
Yes, I guess
and then just a
flashback
nebula.
is inaccurate because it starts off with, like,
historical
meant
footage.
to be, historical footage, and then
some of it looked like from The Ring for some reason. I don't know what that was about.
Start skipping forward because it's like, you know that it's old because it's in black and white, Ryan.
It's slightly grainy.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the
and
moon
then it's got
landing
a weird
footage.
aspect ratio for a little while, but it's not quite like 4:3 or
No.
16:9. No, it just looks weirdly cropped, but not like a proper aspect ratio.
So the season opens with Michael monologuing
As usual.
about lots of things, really, but none of it particularly meant anything to us. And she had a lot of talk about spirituality and all this stuff, which really lines up with what the showrunners were wanting to do with this particular season, which they
themes
talked about
that they build on.
that they wanted to build on for this season of, you know, science and spirituality colliding, and that's an interesting notion to explore for sure. What a silly, weird, throwaway opening to the season. because as much as I didn't care for the opening to the previous season with the stupid eyeball imagery and Tukuvmov and all that, at least that was, it was important to that episode's plot, and also it did follow through on what the season was giving us, which was, here we are, we're opening up, Klingons are doing nasty shit. Okay, and that was the season. Klingon war stuff. Okay, this one opens up with, like, old school footage of us exploring and getting out there, and Michael talking about spirituality and all this, and I'm just looking at it going...
I disagree with the hastiness that you are judging that, because I think... I don't like it. I will say that. I will say that first, because I'm like, that sounds like I might actually like it.
You can't defend.
Yes, but so in the opening for season 1, we set up that imagery and the connection between, like, the ideas and the ideology and the actions being in conflict, right?
Yeah.
This one is setting up that conflict between ideology and science, but like, that exploration of that continues, as does the kind of visuals, because it's taking us along the journey of time and the evolution of things, and this season is exploring the importance of the stories that we tell ourselves and tell each other, which is what she's discussing by turning it back to an African tribe discussing the origins of the Milky Way.
Okay. I guess
it's pretentious bullshit.
It's very pretentiously done, but that doesn't mean what you said isn't in there. I just didn't care for this opener. I'm thinking to myself, what a weird, bizarre... It
goes on too long.
It goes on a long time.
They should have picked one or the other. It either should have been the flashback
of her
to her arriving
and all that, yeah.
and getting to know, or her talking about, like, the origins and the myths.
Yeah.
It doesn't work having both, because it takes too long to get to anything. And it's just like, wait, with the first part, it's like, wait, is Star Trek Discovery trying to, like, did somebody just watch a David Attenborough documentary and they were
yeah.
You know, that's cool, we should do that, because, you know, she's a science officer, so she can be like David Attenborough if she wants.
Look, I don't mind the idea of that
fine.
opener.
The idea...
But what throws me off immediately was, what the fuck were some of those visuals? Some of it did, I'm not joking, did look like the videotape in The Ring. Just random black and white weird shit. Okay, fine. Sci-fi imagery, weird. Okay, cool. Moving on. Someone tell me, honestly tell me, why does Michael's narration sound like she is a robot who's recording her lines of dialogue in the most reverb-filled tunnel that you could have done it in? I don't understand that choice.
No,
I can understand the other choices. Like, as much as I don't like the Spock flashback coming in with this opener, fine, whatever. What was that audio? Because at the end of the day, it didn't sound good. And that's all it needed to be. There was no artistic intent that I could decipher as to why did the creators of the show here decide that the audio needs to sound utterly garbage.
But
there is no answer. There is no answer other than they thought it sounded cool and they thought it sounded atmospheric. I bet you that's a lot of the defense for some of these choices.
Oh, yeah.
Like, look, there's a lot of things that I can understand, but I get a little peeved when it's like little things like this, and the defense is, well, they did it for atmosphere.
Yeah.
Or, well, they did it for the mood. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't even match the tone of what's going on. That choice, the aesthetic that they chose for that, not the visual aesthetic, but the audio aesthetic, distracted from what was the intent. We were supposed to glean information and or meaning from what was being said, but we were too distracted by their choice to go for this aesthetic of making her voice sound this way. So that opener failed at its intent. In a way, a part of its intent was, well, obviously its intent is for us to be engaged and listening, but we weren't because of that choice.
And to get us excited for the ideas of the season.
Instead of leaving us with a puzzled and or disgusted look on our faces, I was confused and you were disgusted. You were like, what the fuck is this?
You kept on trying to figure out if there was something wrong with our sound system.
I was actually playing with our sound system because I was like, I must have this on the wrong setting. And no, I did not. It is distracting to say the least.
Space. The final frontier. Above us. Around us. Within us. We have always looked to the stars to discover who we are.
Season 2 is a different animal to season 1. We're one episode in, and it is very different. Like, noticeably different. And this is coming from people who've only had, like, a couple weeks break from having watched that first season. But it is
the plot
night
of
and day.
The whole season is set up clearly. Like, everything is teed up for this season from episode 1, which feels really weird.
Did you notice that it was brighter?
Yes.
Like, the colors were popping more. The lens flares were way more aggressive, but everything was brighter. It was as if they heard, your show's too dark. And they took it literally. They went, and we did talk about how it was too dark.
Yeah.
We did talk about that. We were like, I wish sometimes we could see the bridge. And this season has said, oh, we're going to turn it up a little on the brightness scale for you.
And it also
and the
feels
uniforms
like-
are going to be brighter now.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, I don't know if they're different uniforms, like they're the same, but maybe they're
like
bright.
Discovery's
uniforms. But I don't know if it's the brighter lighting or if they are a different shade of blue to where they were in the first season. But I didn't like the look of them in the brighter aesthetic because they looked fake. Like, they're not real clothes, they're not real uniforms that you would actually wear in a military. But I'm looking at him and I'm just looking at, I don't know, the color palette of them in this season. They just didn't feel like I was noticing that they were costumes more so than the first season, where the moody lighting, it's kind of like with the Zack Snyder films, right? Where the Justice League movie came out and they turned up the brightness and the saturation, and it made the costumes look even faker because they were designed for a moodier atmosphere. And I was kind of noticing that with the Discovery uniforms in this episode.
Yeah, I was noticing that too, but more so in kind of a broader sense of the color grading and the basic editing that they seem to have done to all the footage. Because like all of the colors seem heightened a bit, and like they've like upped the blue hue a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Because you notice that in a lot of the CG shots.
They thought that CVIS Pacem Parabellum episode or whatever wasn't blue enough.
Yeah.
They thought
so
we need
like,
to blue things up more.
We need to carry that through, but also with like the kind of basic editing that they've done to all of the shots, they're like, oh, people complained that they couldn't see things clearly, so we're gonna sharpen the shit out of everything that we actually filmed.
They clearly did take notes from what people did and didn't appreciate about that first season.
They
and
wanna
I
make it
commend
better.
them on wanting to improve things. There's obviously more levity in this season. There's a brighter kind of tone and atmosphere to things, as well as in the visuals, but in the tone of the stuff too. Things have more of a jovial nature, levity.
I
They've
think
also clearly someone told them, please guys, can we have the characters be like friendly to one another?
let's make them actually like each other and have a relationship.
And there was a definite,
maybe.
there was a definite improvement, and or depending on how you feel, I felt like it was an improvement in a way of they definitely said, can we let the characters have stuff, like some, not just like stuff to do in the plot, but like characterization to them, because even dumbass
Maybe.
characters I didn't like the dumbass scientist guy that got killed, and Nan, and all of these other little characters,
Even
and Jet Reno,
the doctor.
they all had little things to them that brought
Little
out a
moment.
form of characterization in which I go, oh, okay, I'd be interested to see
They're doing
more of
something
this.
there.
Well, in the first season, that was a weakness. Like, the Helms crew, they had characterization to them. Don't know who they are, but I get a sense more so than I did in the first season. Like,
We get
Detmer-
reminded of their names.
We get a roll call, but Detmer, didn't know anything about in the first season. Still don't know any details about her, but the energy that actress was allowed to demonstrate in this episode, as small as it was, allowed
you a
me to
feel.
get some form of characterization, and that was so good to see. Of course,
Like, there's something.
with these improvements, I have caveats to pretty much all of them, because there's bad examples of these things too. But to point
Yeah.
out, I commend the show on hearing out things
They tried.
and trying to put some more stuff in. What are some other things you noticed that they tried to implement into this season that was either lacking or non-existent in that first season? Did you notice anything else kind of
I think
creeping in?
those were the major changes that I noticed. The visual palette, the humor is very in your face, and I think we may need to try and do a joke off to see the ones that we remember, because a lot of them are atrocious.
I think-
and like in that way that it just makes me smile that they thought that was funny.
This is the power of math, people! Come on!
You are correct, MC.
It definitely does feel like with Captain Pike's inclusion, but not only him, but Michael, Saru, Tilly, all of our people, there was a definite mandate, it felt like, as in, okay, that first season, we tested what it was like to make a Star Trek show without the Starfleet kind of ideals and principles. Can we have those again, though? Like, we need a resemblance of that. Captain Pike, here's the best thing about the season. I still don't care for the fact that they had to dredge up Pike and the Enterprise and all of that, but Anson Mount is a charming dude. His performance is that electric, that charismatic, that magnificent, that he makes some terrible lines of dialogue look good. He's that great as this character. And a part of the reason of why he's so great is because he embodies, as Captain Pike, what we like about Star Trek, that idealism and principles and kind-naturedness, whilst also being firm and strict as a leader. He demonstrates in just a few scenes in this episode the complete spread of a Starfleet captain that we've seen in other Star Trek shows.
Yeah.
And it's not just him, but Michael, Saru, obviously, Tilly, all these other characters are stating with character actions or literal lines of dialogue, those Starfleet principles that were lacking in that first season. Obviously, in that first season, there was a logic there because they were being corrupted by an evil captain.
And they were at war, so
And they
that
were at
makes
war,
it different.
But they clearly took on board that people wanted more of that thing that Star Trek is known for in that regard, and they've done it in this episode. Whether they did it well or not, they at least have put it in there. An attempt is made.
They took note that people were like, we want Star Trek in our Star Trek. They didn't fully get there, in my opinion, but they definitely
In this specific episode, not
they
fully, no.
definitely heard it,
They-
which makes me feel a bit better, because that they actually are trying to address some of the criticisms and trying to make the show appeal to the audience that's already invested in the world in a way that it wasn't as consistently conveyed in season 1. Because more so in season 1, we kept on being like, but who is this for? Even in those first 2 episodes, we were like, but who would watch this?
Like who's
what
the
are you
demographic
trying to
they're
say?
trying to hit? Yeah. There is the downside, though, that could have come and has in a way, in my opinion, of, okay, first season, it set up this world, these characters, its tone, its identity. This is the show. Then the second season comes around, and not just for this show, but for any other shows. A season comes around, whether it's the second or third or whatever, and they have to take on board the criticisms, and they have to try and evolve and improve, but you don't want to do it too much, or you've betrayed what you've set up and the fan base that you have accumulated. But you also have that issue of, if you don't evolve enough, then it feels kind of mishmashy. And that was my problem with this episode, is I noticed all these things that they did put in to improve. But
very stark between those two things, and like your attention is really grabbed by those decisions that they made if you've watched it. And it is a really tricky thing to balance keeping people on board and getting more people involved, because you need to be doing those two things if you want your show to be renewed.
For this first episode, I did not think that it gelled with these new improvements and the old, because to me, the old stuff, the Star Trek Discovery aesthetic that had been set up from season 1 was on nitro fuel this episode. The spinning camera, the lens flares, the fucking music. I'm sorry, if you know, in that first season we discussed the music and we said a lot of negative things about that music. I want to say it right here on the record. I'm sorry that I said the music was overblown in that first season, because it pales in comparison to this singular episode in season 2. It was insufferable. There was so much music just blaring, constant noise. Not just the noise of the music, but noises on the spaceship, noises outside, noise, and the music would not shut up. That first season, I'm so sorry. The music was subtle in comparison to this one. Fuck me. And that's what I'm saying, like, nitro fuel on the old. So when this new stuff comes in, I imagine what I think of it is as, here's a nice map. I've made a nice map here of Star Trek. Here's a map. And, oh no, I've got to put new stuff. And instead of drawing, like, putting more details on the map for more room, I've just grabbed a piece of paper with a printout and I've stapled it to that lovely map that I've drawn. Because that's what that new stuff feels like to me. It feels like it's stapled on there.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Linus? You okay? You look a little... Yes, I hear it's going around.
That scene in the turbo lift with Linus, they treat it like we should know who the fuck Linus is, which is a joke in itself.
That's fucking awful.
And it feels like a stapled on critique. There was many lines of dialogue in which it did feel like the characters were literally looking at the audience and saying, we heard this comment from the first season, we're not going to do it again, we're moving on. And it just felt like very abrasive to see.
Yeah, like, it's
We know the Orville exists. Here's a character called Linus who looks like he would be in the Orville. Love us now. And it's like, okay, guys, stop, please. Don't do that again.
Yeah, like, I do not enjoy, like, fictional media where it feels so manufactured. Because it creates that disconnect when you're watching it. Like, to go back to what you were saying about the music, like, there is no silence. Like, as I was watching it, I was like, okay, and the editor has done this now, and we're fading out because something's about to go bang, and
Spinning the camera.
And then it would, but, like, specifically with the sound editing, it's just like, I shouldn't be able to clearly see what you guys have done, because one, I should be invested enough that that's not what I'm paying attention to, and two, ideally it shouldn't be so obvious that even a novice, like complete amateur at music editing and audio editing, should be able to tell exactly what you did there.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be so clear cut. There should be finesse and expertise that is being demonstrated. You want to be showing the quality of the people that you have on board and letting them show their skills. Because I am sure that the music editors on this are qualified and they can do better than what they're being allowed to do, because so much of the music in Discovery in this episode and from season 1 is telegraphing the emotions and the plot.
Again, the defense there is the aesthetic. It matches the aesthetic and it provides atmosphere. To us, it's too much. Too much. Another thing that's too much in regards to the changeover from season 1 to season 2, something we were keen on seeing, is how they would attach themselves as writers to the characters. In season 1, they're still figuring out who these characters are, what their voices are, what the strength and weaknesses of the actors are.
A whole lot of a lot.
And that's what I was going to say, is the weakness was they've fallen in love with certain things and certain characters and really turned it up. And look, Tilly's a character that I've liked. I didn't love her necessarily on a rewatch, but I was a little disappointed on that regard. But this time round on the rewatch of season 2, and I remember season 1, I found her like insufferable, and I was like, oh, so this is what the people who didn't like Tilly saw, because the writers have clearly got attached to her character and they're giving her stuff to do and they're thinking, oh, this will be nice, this will be nice, this will be nice.
They're setting her up in a few different ways.
And not just setting her up, they're just indulging in what her character allows. And that's what it does feel like in this episode, indulgence, because there are moments, like in the short trek of Runaway, there are moments where the character rings true, the performance is great. There are things within this episode that happen with Tilly, specifically her and Paul's dynamic, that I was really vibing with and really agreed with. But then
the repeat after me moment was nice.
They would just dollop on a heavy spoonful of self-indulgence and love of that character. And I love her too, but I want to love her too, and I have loved her in the past, but there is such thing as restraint. Look, I love Reg Barkley, but you know what was great about Reg? He wasn't in every episode. So when he did come up once every season, they were allowed to indulge for that little while because it was one episode. And then he was gone, and if you didn't like Reg, you didn't have to watch that episode. Or if you didn't like Loxana Troy, you didn't have to watch that episode.
And it was just one episode. And it made it very clear from like the start of the episode that this is a Reg episode. This is going to be built around this character. So then, like, when it's on TV, you can be like, okay, well, I don't want to watch this one. I'll tune in next week. And then it's fine. But it's very different.
It's not to say that she's like this character I'm going to mention, but this problem is what I relate to a certain character from Star Trek Voyager, Neelix. Neelix is a very hard-to-like character for some people, including myself, and one of the reasons was they had an idea for what Neelix was, but they fell in love with a certain aspect of his character, the comedy silly guy, and they fell in love with that actor, Ethan Phillips, who's apparently a really nice guy. So they just kept writing Neelix to Ethan Phillips and what they liked about Ethan Phillips, and that character became insufferable and kind of creatively bankrupt after a certain point. There came a point where it's like the show became aware that, oh shit, we kind of put ourselves in a dead end with Neelix because we indulged ourselves and we indulged the actor and we indulged these things instead of serving the character and serving the story. And in this episode, there was moments like that, Tilly especially.
Oh, I know what's wrong. Your pinky is, it's just really weird to say pinky to a captain. It's not like a very authoritative finger, but, but it's not on the right pad. Can I?
Kidding.
Oh my God, I thought I broke a captain.
But what did you think of this episode?
It was mostly god-awful, but in a way that didn't make me mad. It just made me laugh at it.
Pathetic is the word you described it before we started recording.
Yeah, I stand by that
So
statement.
you found it so bad it was funny, kind of an affair.
Yeah, that's the closest approximation to the way that it made me feel. Though at various points it made me really bored and decided to give myself a pedicure instead of actually paying attention for a while.
Well, that is something good to hear because you did need to give yourself a pedicure. But I didn't like it.
No.
I didn't like it, but the best way to describe my feelings of it was all surface. That's what it was. It was all surface, no substance.
Okay, here's my metaphor for this one.
Okay, go on.
It's a slip and slide.
It's a slip and slide, okay.
Because like it's all surface and it just wants
Slurface? I had to.
It's all surface and it just wants to slick by and just keep you moving. Just keep it moving.
Well, that's Star Trek Discovery. Just keep moving. Don't think about it. Keep
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah,
Like,
but this one
I was
feels-
thinking.
It feels more like a smooth, quick, bumpy ride.
Look. There was actually some stuff of substance within this episode. There was actual things that I enjoyed within the episode.
It's not 100% garbage.
No, but the surface of the show, the sheen, the CGI.
Michael Sheen?
I wish he was in this.
Doing his laugh from Breaking Dawn.
Fucking Sarek sounded like Michael Sheen in the
Yes!
fucking Twilight movies. Sarek said Spock. Spock. He said Spock so weirdly in this episode. It was he had so many random lines that were just so bizarre. There was one where he sounded like Christopher Walken. I can't remember the exact sentence.
Intonation.
Yeah, there was a certain line he said, and I can't remember what it was for the life of me, but I'll play it. Where he had a certain voice crackle effect going on, and it was so fucking weird.
I expect you to be friends.
With this episode, I didn't hate it. The things of substance that I did like was smothered underneath the sheen. The Michael Sheen, but the sheen of the flashy surface level things of the show, like the remember this thing? It's a reference to the cage. Or you remember Spock? Not just that, but the spinning camera, the fast dialogue, the implicit thing of don't think about it that we've talked about, because I could not stop thinking of, okay, I know where the season ends. I know how this all ties together. So I'm watching things going, that doesn't make any sense. Or if it does, I don't remember them explaining it in a way that makes sense. So, Rachel, we know, and again, spoilers alert, we know at the end of the series that Michael is the Red Angel. Of course, there's two Red Angels. One of them is her mum. But we know at the end that Michael's the Red Angel, she's the one doing the signals, so that the Discovery can find these important things along the way to help them defeat the evil AI, so that way Michael can get the suit to go back in time. It's a paradox, right? Like, it's a loop, right? My question is, and please, someone answer this. Maybe you know, Rachel, I'm not the greatest with deciphering all these time paradoxes and loops and everything. I'll admit that straight off the bat. So maybe I'll have an egg on my face after asking these questions. But in the original timeline, the original timeline before the Red Angel came into the story, right? Like, we don't see this, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, in the original timeline of when the AI came along and fucked everything up and they weren't able to make the suit or whatever, how did they know where these things were to go get them? Like, how did they know where Jet Reno was to go get her, to put a signal there for them to go get her? Like, how did that come to be? Do you know what I'm saying? These are the things I think of. Like, in the run before Michael could plant the signal to go get Jet Reno, how did they know Jet Reno was there to go get? Because they only know she's there to go get because Michael puts a signal there to go get her, and Mike only knows to put a signal there to go get her because Michael put a signal there to go get her. how do they know to put it? How did they know originally that she was someone important to get?
Okay, so you're basically asking where is the starting point for that loop?
No, well,
Because you are saying that at some point Michael needed to find out where Tig was to know that she needed to go get Tig because they needed Tig for that reason.
yeah, like, how do they know Tig existed for them to need her? Right? Like, later on, Tig Notaro's character does stuff to help them defeat the situation.
And they wouldn't have
do
been
that with
able
every
to do that without her.
And every red signal is that.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like, in the original run of the time, how did they know that they needed Tig Notaro?
Okay.
How did they needed to know that they needed to go to the Kelpian planet? Because in all those situations, it's because Michael is going there to put the signal there so that they know to go there in this story that we're seeing. We're seeing a story in which our crew is following the signals that Michael from the future is putting there. But how did they... Like, how did it all start? Like, how does it even make... Like, I don't know. Is it because Michael's mother somehow ties into this and I'm just glaringly forgetting something?
Okay, I'm going to be a sourpuss first.
No, I mean, I want an actual answer.
And then discuss my idea for the actual answer. And I don't think that they have an idea. I don't think they thought about that. They were just like, well... in the paradox it is this way, so this is the only thing that we need to explain is the fact that it's the paradox and this is the loop that they're in, and these things are just running its course.
Yeah.
Now, if I was trying to actually give an answer and give a shit, what I would probably think about is how Michael's mother is linked and she keeps on re-experiencing things and she is able to learn from those things. So if Michael is stuck in that loop without like getting out, which is the run of events that we see, then potentially, depending on what stage she gets at with her suit, because if she gets a suit that works like her mum's because they haven't got all of the pieces together, which is what the run that we see is, where everything fits together and she gets a suit that works so that they can leap into the
and
future.
Tig Notaro helps them build stuff for
as
that.
long as she is getting to the point where she gets a suit, then she's learning from that run.
Okay.
So eventually she has learned that she needs all of these things, and then that is when we see it happen, because she's learned that, okay, we need this thing and this thing and this thing.
So,
we need this to happen, or this isn't working out because we don't have this. How can we get this? And then the next time they run through the events, because she's got the suit, so she remembers that she's learned from the past.
I'm losing, like, I'm getting what you're saying, but I'm losing the thread because I don't think that they thought about it at all like this. Okay, the closest.
Why I set it up like that.
And again, this doesn't matter. This doesn't actually matter in this episode, but these are the things I think of. Okay, and you're right. Michael's mother exists. Michael's mother exists. She's lived through this event, and she has mentioned that she's gone through this several times. And the idea is she's, doing the thing in which she's
already tried to make changes.
She's lived through all the possibilities, and maybe she knows these things that they have to go get. So instead of telling Michael directly, she goes to when Spock was a small child and they mind meld because Spock has dyslexia. And that affects him so that he can affect the story. Okay, I can deal with that. My thing is, in this episode, Jet Reno's a specific person in a specific situation and location to go get. Okay. In a whole universe and a whole timeline of things.
on an asteroid that is flying through space, they would have
How did Michael's mum know to
astronomical amount of variables to determine
how to go get
that was where that asteroid would be, but whatever.
Let's say Michael's mum is the reason, and again, this sounds so. Again, this is a problem with making a time travel stories are always very hard to execute flawlessly, and obviously we think that they didn't do this, but I'm trying to think. Michael's mum, okay, she would know, oh, this physical location has this important thing we need. Okay, all the other ones are locations that are very easy to get, like, oh, here's the crystal planet with the time crystals. That will be important for my daughter to go get. Okay, fine, I understand that. But this one it's a specific person with a specific skill. How did her mother know, with the limitations her time travel suit allows her, by the way, that she needed to find, like, that Jet Reno existed in the first place to go get? Like, isn't there any other scientist or engineer with this level of qualifications that would have been easier to find than Jet Reno? Like, I'm trying to think, like, okay, the others, I get, they're locations. Okay, my daughter,
like,
she needs to go to this planet. But this one is, okay, so my daughter needs to have the Lindenberg baby after it's disappeared. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so weird to me to think about it in this manner, but this is what I think about when I rewatch the show, knowing where it goes and knowing that isn't really explained in a way to me that made enough sense for me to recollect it and going, oh, I remember at the end of the season they have the flashbacks going, hey, here's Jet Reno and here's this to explain, but it didn't actually make the logic to me of what I'm saying is, how did it go on the original run of things? How did they know Jet Reno was the key? Because I like Jet Reno. Yeah. She's a fun character, but nobody knew where she was and that she was alive in the first place. But Michael's mum probably
dead.
Does because the plot needs it to be that way.
Yeah, I think the Band-Aid that you possibly could put over that gaping wound in the plot hole.
Don't think about it.
Other than that, other than a sign saying "Don't look here."
Mystery box storytelling at its finest
would be that I believe that later on in the season, Michael's mum discusses how she was continually trying to, like, go and visit her and to interact with her, and that if on one of those failed attempts to go see her daughter, she bumped into Tig on one of the other Starfleets.
I don't think that happened, did it?
No.
We'll find out. But these are things I think about on these rewatch.
I mean, that is just fully me trying to pull something out of my arse.
And that did affect my enjoyment of this episode, is I was not fully engaged with it because I was thinking of these complex things, because the season is a mystery thing, right? They even have lines of dialogue in the episode that are very like, ooh, that's like Michael at the end about her and her relationship with Spock. Every time she talks about Spock, there's characters just stating, you're not telling us something, we're going to find out later in the season. Isn't that right, audience? Aren't you looking forward to that mystery being answered in our mystery box show, in which we have mysteries all the time because we're a mystery box show? Like, and
then there's the other end of the spectrum where Pike tells you not to get your hopes up because you might be disappointed.
And that is mystery box storytelling, right? Like J.J. Abrams has talked about this in his presentation, in which it's not about the answers, but the journey along the way.
The questions you can ask.
And I fundamentally reject that type of storytelling, and there has not been a successful example of that, especially from him and his crew. And maybe,
in your opinion, other people are thoroughly enjoy those things.
Yeah, people enjoy the Star Wars sequel trilogy or Lost or stuff like that, but I don't. That's what I'm saying. I fundamentally reject that idea of storytelling. I think answers are very satisfying and very important.
That's we like Babylon
and
5.
Resolutions, and Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine. That stuff is very important, and it affects it on a rewatch, because I'm rewatching this, and instead of enjoying the episode fully, I'm thinking about, does this actually make any fucking sense with where the show goes with this? And the answer is I don't know, because the explanation of what was happening in this mystery for the mystery box season was so confusing and perplexing to me that didn't make any sense. Here I am looking at this and I'm still thinking, I don't think this makes any sense. And is it because it doesn't make any sense, or is it because I just can't figure out the puzzle?
In terms of the content of it, you look at stories, you think, well, what are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question. In TV, the first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, look at, like, Star Wars. You got the droids. They meet the mysterious woman. Who's that? We don't know. Mystery box, you know. Then you meet Luke Skywalker. He gets the droid. You see the holographic image. You learn, oh, it's a message. You know, she wants to, find Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's her only hope. But who the hell is Obi-Wan Kenobi? Mystery box.
To talk positively about the episode, I enjoyed the actual central plot.
Yeah, the idea is good. They've stumbled upon these things, and Pike comes in very strong.
He comes in very strong. He has a very unique personality, like unique for this show. Like he's
distinct.
He feels very defined as he walks in, and that is great. Lorca had that too, but it was very different. Like his one was far more. He's mysterious. I think he even had lines of dialogue that I was like, I like to be. I think of myself as mysterious. All this kind of bullshit. Pike comes in. He is who he is. There's no mystery here. That's the guy. He doesn't wow us with any twists or turns later in the season. If you don't know the stuff about the cage, don't worry. The show will let you know about the cage, and the show milks it, and the show goes for it. But
it goes for it.
He's true to his character from the beginning. He is what he is. I respect that about him. And Anson Mount's great. I enjoy the central plot of they found this ship in amongst all this, deadly debris. They have to navigate their way. They don't have the ability to teleport. They don't have the ability to take a shuttle over there. They've got to navigate their way through all this stuff.
They're refusing to leave anybody behind.
They're refusing to leave. They got the time, the time pressure with the pulsar, whatever going to happen. And I loved when they actually got to the ship, Tig Notaro's whole entire situation on that ship of her having kept these people alive using her engineering knowledge and incorporating that with what she could interpret from, medical stuff. I thought that was really great stuff. I thought that was thrilling. I like Jet Reno. As much as I've talked shit about, how did they know to get her? I like Jet Reno as a character. I like Tig Notaro as this character. I found her very funny. I found her very light-hearted in a way. I liked how, look, some of her jokes don't land for me, sure. As pretty much most of the comedy, the outright comedy in this episode falls flat for me. But I liked her optimism. When she was asked why she, you stayed? Really? And she was like, of course I did. Of course, it was silly of me in the long run, but, I had to. It was the right thing to do. It was so nice.
Starfleet values coming through.
It was nice to have that. And I kind of wish, this reminds me of Context is for Kings in a way, where I wish that the episode focused more on that story rather than the multiple threads that we're going to weave throughout the season. And here's all the stuff about Spock and Michael, and here's all the stuff with Sarek and Michael. I just kind of wish that it was nuts to butts this story of we've found a thing. We're going to figure out how we get to the thing. We get on the thing. We find out a situation. Oh no, shit's gone sideways. We need to figure a way to get out. That would have been a great episode on its own, but this fills up here's all the stuff with Paul. We need to have the running threads from the last season to continue on and new ones for this season. And those were the weakest elements to me. The strong elements was the actual plot that was at the center of all of those threads. I found that really engaging. There was not anything particularly dumb in that plot that I rolled my eyes at. It was stupid, but funny. It was on purposely stupid when the science guy got killed.
Yeah.
But I took that for the cheese it was.
Yeah, that's just there because it has to be there. And, because it's just we can't have Burnham competing for being science officer.
Well, it's because he was a guy.
Yeah.
And he was being dismissive of a woman, so that taught him a lesson.
That too. And then the other point, like during the mission portion, that I just got angry at, frustrated, maybe a better word, when she misses the transporter so that she can be the only one that sees the Red Angel.
Which is her.
Yeah.
That one's her, I'm pretty sure. The one thing I got annoyed at in the mission, see, that I understood. I went, okay, that's fine. She's our main character.
It just
I
felt
get it.
too forced
The
for
one
me.
thing I didn't understand was they had this shot where her and Pike eject out of the thing. She catches him, and oh no, we've got a certain time pressure to press the jet boosters or whatever the fuck. In the nick of time, you see like she was about to fall onto these spiky rocks. She shoots off. We see she shoots off with him, and they're safe. That's fine. You know what wasn't fine? And this is something we've said. Choose one. Cut to Discovery trying to get communications from her to make sure she's okay. Huge silence. And then we're fine. And it was that typical bait and switch of, and of course we know that she's fine because she's the main character. But it's that thing of they're doing the milking of the tension of, did Michael and Pike not make it? You showed us visually that they made it.
Yeah,
we
saw
really did not work. Like, it really did not work.
We know that they're going to be relieved in a second, so there's no tension with us seeing them freaking out on the bridge because we know that they're fine.
They showed us that.
We know that they're going to just calms in a second because they're not going to leave them hanging. And then they do their mission, and then they're like, "Oh wait, we didn't tell Discovery that we're okay."
No, I mean, and of course the tension would be pretty much non-existent anyway, because we know they're going to be fine, because it's the first episode of this season. You're not going to kill them off, but you still have to build that in there. Like, we watched an episode of TNG in which they did the exact same kind of thing, but the big punch at the end was Picard walked onto the bridge and they were all like, oh, he's here, and he just took care of the situation that was at hand. And it was very reminiscent. That's the Darmok episode, for those keen on knowing. And that one worked. But here, they showed us, they milked it, and it just felt like, oh, come on, guys. Can we not waste time here? Like, I think that's one of my big things about Star Trek Discovery is, heck, guys, we've got other things we could focus on right now.
Burnham? Burnham, do you copy?
Discovery, this is Burnham. We have touchdown.
Tilly was a firecracker with the humor this episode.
Yeah, and the bits that worked best for her was when she wasn't trying to be funny, when she was being genuine about her feelings and emotions, and when her and Paul spoke to people, spoke as not just colleagues, not just peer mentor, but as friends. That stuff was the stuff that worked with Tilly.
I really enjoyed that scene.
Even with her and Michael, when they were discussing when Michael came back from having a leg fucked up, even that worked better than any trying to force comedy in with Tilly. Like, haha, she's hecka awkward. The funniest thing that happened to me in this episode, nearly had tears in my eyes laughing at this, and you know exactly what I'm going to say. I'll preface this right now. If you're sensitive to me making mean comments about children, this isn't for you, because Spock is a creepy ventriloquist doll of a child. He is that kid. He doesn't even get to fucking speak in this episode, really. Like, I think he has like a line or two, maybe. I can't remember. But what's most important is he is so funny to look at, because all I see is a stupid haircut and or wig on his head. These fake eyebrows have attached to the kid's face, and he's just constantly got his head tilted to an angle in which he does look like a puppet that had the hand removed and is just sitting limp on a stool. That kid cracks me up, and it cracks me up that I'm supposed to believe that kid's Spock. Like, any time that he pops on screen, I'm giggling, because he looks like he's supposed to be in a lame-ass horror movie about a boy that lives inside the walls.
Yeah,
right?
that's
He's
what
not
I was gonna
Spock.
say.
He's the boy. He's Brahms.
He's more Brahms than Spock.
I love that kid because he is so fucking creepy looking as Spock that it takes me out of the scene. And what I love about that is I don't want to be in those scenes because, as we've stated many times, the huge weakness of Star Trek Discovery to me is its leeching off and needing to attach itself to the greater legacy of the original series. I want this show to have its own identity, be its own thing.
But one flashback wasn't enough. We need to get a flashback to the flashback at the end of the episode as well.
And of course, the weaker aspect of the episode to me was the whole, where the title is, Brother. All the stuff about her and Spock, there's nothing actually done with it in this episode because that's going to be the big thing of the show, right?
It's a weird kind of cliffhanger because brother, I'm pretty sure, is the last word in this episode.
The whole thing with her and Spock, look, it serves a narrative purpose for the overall season, sure. Did it serve anything for this episode? No. All it did was waste time.
Nothing.
All it did was waste time. All they needed to do was have her scenes with Sarek and Pike. That's it. You didn't need all these flashbacks. You didn't need all these moments in which she's like, I fucked up. It's me. All we needed was just some brief lines about how she feels bad about, or she hasn't talked to Spock in years, and she feels bad about how they left off. And she, at the end of the episode, is like, I want to see Spock. And then at the end of the episode, she's like, I want to see him. Is he on board? And then she gets told no. And then she can reconcile with, oh, I've missed him again. Or maybe next time. Or maybe you can still have the scene in which she goes to his quarters, but that scene doesn't serve the episode of the theme of brother or whatever that I'm describing of family. Well, that scene served at the end is, here's the mystery box thing of the season. Spock's not here because he knows about the signals too. What's that hijinks going to lead to? It doesn't further the lame-ass fart of a thread that is the family theme that this episode was trying to, that it said it was trying to explore. No, that scene at the end serves as, we're going to further this out in the next episode or the one after that or for the rest of the season. All it is a cliffhanger. That's all it's there for. Nothing else.
I'm too late, aren't I? Oh, Spock.
Mystery box.
All right, I think it's time, Rach. Hugh da 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 da. Woo! Season 2, Hugh is still fucking dead, but that doesn't mean they can't still get Wilson Cruz to come back on to film some scenes. This episode had probably the best eye imagery I've ever seen in any piece of media. Move out of the way, any other piece of media. Go fuck yourself, Psycho, with that shot of her dead eye. Fuck you, Hitchcock, cause Star Trek Discovery is here with Rachel. I would say that this eyeball shot is Yum Yum, because it is of Hugh appearing in Stamets's iris. Just a little Hugh, a little miniaturized Hugh, just telling us, and / Paul, that I liked this opera. And that's all we've learned about Hugh in this episode was he liked opera. No, I actually wrote down the notes. You want to hear what we learned about Hugh? Hugh likes opera. Hugh loves Paul, and Hugh was right, as usual. And that was in regards to about, he was right in that regard because he knew one day that Paul would see the merits of the opera, which relates exactly to the first point, which is Hugh likes opera. Specifically that type of opera. And that's what we learned about Hugh in the episode. And Paul misses him. And Paul is haunted by his ghost, which is funny, because don't worry, he'll be back. And that's Hugh. That's Hugh Da. What a thrilling character to really, obviously this episode is teeing up that we're going to bring him back. Because look, here he is on a big screen. We're reminding you that he's here. This episode fell flat in that story regard of Paul because I actually did feel bad for Paul because the acting from him was compelling enough for me to feel it, and him and Tilly's dynamic over the issue, but I kept reminding myself, whoa, Ryan, what's the issue about? Oh, the character of Hugh Culber? Oh, okay. And as soon as I remembered the sad thing in the middle of all of that was about Hugh, I didn't care anymore because I remembered, oh, that's right, Hugh wasn't a character that they ever developed or made into an individual that was worth caring about other than for the tragedy of his death and nothing more.
Hugh was in service of Paul Stamets' character. He was, basically who Paul loved. In season 2, we get to know who Hugh is as a person, what his ambitions are, what his concerns are. Who does he want to be? What are the consequences of what happened to him?
What would you give this episode? A yum or a yum yum? Yum being bad and yum yum being good.
I think I've ended up in the realm of a yum yum.
Yum yum.
Really? What has pushed you in that? Because I kind of have come across with more negatives than positives.
There are at least a few things that I did enjoy. I do like the way that Tilly has settled into pursuing the captaincy in a more rigorous way, and that the effects of the last season are paying off, and it feels like her character has grown in a direct consequence to what happened to her in season 1. So I genuinely like that. I like Pike, and I like the humor that he brings to it, and the layers of development that Ensign Mount is able to bring across with that character through his dialogue as well as his acting choices. He feels really well-rounded. He feels like he could have played Pike in any other show and he would have fit in.
God, he's great, isn't he?
He's just great. I enjoyed laughing at how non-Vulcan Sarek was.
Spock! Help me, Spock!
Spock.
I enjoyed this episode on a schlock factor.
That is the word for it.
It is atrocious. Really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Overall.
At the end of the day, this episode wasn't very good. It had good things within it, but it wasn't good.
Not good.
It was a hot, steaming pile of poo-poo. But it had that B-grade campy schlock energy enough for me not to feel angered by it. Although it did have too much pretentious energy mixed in. If we removed the pretentious Michael Spock boo-hoo energy, the episode wouldn't be good still, but I would like it a lot more. I'd love it a lot more.
It would be less bad.
I give it a very mild yum yum.
Yum yum.
It only just skates on by, and I think it's because of Anson Mount as Pike. And I'm going to be honest, that factor will last quite a while, but I'm just going to say it is not going to be a factor that's going to sway me for very long. Anson Mount as Pike is charismatic for sure, but that charisma is only going to cloud my judgment momentarily. I am saying it for a fact that one of the main reasons I give this a yum yum is the breath of fresh air that is Anson Mount as Pike.
Hit it.
So we are going to be doing season 2, episode 2 next week, which is called New Eden.
I remember it. I remember it fondly, but what's the plot?
A new signal brings the Discovery to a distant planet, Torellian? Something. That is inhabited by the descendants of human survivors of World War III, which was fought on Earth 200 years ago.
Yep. that one, New Eden. So we'll be talking about that next episode. So make sure to check it out if you haven't, so you're up to date with what we're saying, or, just read some stuff if you're not going to be bothered with that much energy. Rach, it's great to be back, isn't it? It's so good to be back here talking Star Trek Discovery. Not those fucking short treks, but actual Star Trek Discovery. We didn't even mention Nan. We mentioned her briefly, but she's in the episode, and they don't really introduce, I forgot that she was supposed to be an engineer.
Yeah.
I remembered her as a security person, but in this they specifically stated she's an engineer, and I don't remember that about her character, so that'll be something fun to see if that's followed through more heavily on the rewatch. I thought she was his security officer, but she's an engineer. They specifically state she's an engineer.
Captain Christopher Pike requests permission to come aboard. He has an engineer and science officer with him.
That's it, Rach. It's great to be back here talking Star Trek with you. Great to, be engaging again in this world and to, give something for the people to hear if they enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, make sure to rate and review us on whatever podcatcher allows it. It is always greatly appreciated to get that. It helps us, and it also is just a good way of getting validation, but also feedback.
It's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, and feedback. If you also feel like communicating with us, we have our email, which is
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
yumyumpod@gmail.com. You can drop us an email there. Let us know your thoughts, opinions, feelings on things we've discussed or things about this episode that we may not have touched on. And of course, we are on all those social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all of those bad boys. We've got a page on there, YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. All of this stuff is in the description of the episode, so you can just click on that and it's all there. And if you're feeling extra yummy and extra yum yum,
and one extra of us,
we have a Patreon in which we have further episodes relating to Star Trek. We have episodes in which we talk about the best of and the worst rated episodes of other Star Trek series. We talk about the Star Trek movies, and we give our overall thoughts on television shows that we wouldn't necessarily want to cover as our own show, like episode by episode. Like we talk about Doctor Who, Sherlock, maybe even one day, Rachel, we may do our thoughts on Star Trek The Lower Decks, because we kind of get the feeling that that's not one we would want to do an episode-by-episode breakdown of, but that could be a good one to give our thoughts on when we eventually are allowed to watch it, when it eventually is allowed to get international distribution. Maybe, but of course the Patreon, so check that out. It's a fun time. Well, Rachel, I think it's time for us to disembark on our voyages into the Yum Yum.